This is the Son of the Law podcast. Hey, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the Son of the Law podcast. I'm your host, Jay Christopher. Before we get going here, I want to just thank you for listening and supporting the show. I want to encourage you to talk about the show with your friends and your family. We're trying to have conversations that spark interest, but also make you think, but also get you celebrating life in a small town. And the nature of our show requires that you talk about it with your friends, talk about it with your family, follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player for us to grow every other Monday at 6 a.m. So you can be ready for that drive to work or the Never Miss a Monday workout. Also want to thank our sponsors, Complete Auto Service in Richmond, Missouri, and Cutting Edge Landscapes in Lawson, Missouri. You guys have been great, and just super thrilled to be a partner in this with you. This episode is brought to you by Complete Auto Service Center. I want to share something close to home, literally. If you're anywhere near Richmond, Missouri, and your vehicle needs attention, there's a place that embodies trust and integrity, Complete Auto Service Center. I've known Mark and Amanda for years, and they make me feel like I'm part of their family. From oil changes to engine replacements, brakes to transmissions, they handle it all with professionalism and care. Their certified techs use quality parts, and they stand behind their work with a 36-month, 36,000-mile warranty. But it's more than just repairs. It's about peace of mind. It's about knowing that your vehicle is in the hands of people who value honesty and excellence. So, if you're seeking a reliable partner for your automotive needs, visit CompleteASC.com or stop by 718 Woolard Boulevard. Let them earn your trust, your business, and your friendship. Complete Auto Service Center. Complete maintenance, complete repairs, complete peace of mind. This episode is brought to you by Cutting Edge Landscapes. I've known Brandon Steffen, the owner of Cutting Edge Landscapes, for over 15 years. We've seen each other through a lot, climbed mountains together, served together, and when it came time to trust someone with my lawn, there was no question. I turned to Brandon and his team. Let me tell you, the difference after just one application was truly incredible. My yard went from weedy and full of dandelions to lush and vibrant. It was green, like really green. Also, I fought the bag system for years, never really seeing the results I wanted, but it has new life now, and that's all thanks to Cutting Edge. Cutting Edge isn't just about landscape projects either. They're about building relationships and treating your property like it's their own. Whether it's fertilization, aeration, or seasonal treatments, they tailor their services to what your lawn truly needs. With over 40 years in the business, Cutting Edge Landscape stands by their motto, "Your property is our passion." And after seeing the results firsthand, I can vouch for that. Visit callcuttingedge.com or 816-580-3343 to schedule your consultation. Your lawn will thank you. All right, joining us this morning in my home this morning is Mr. Joe Koeberl. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Glad to have you. Glad that you could be here. Glad we could get together. I have so many questions for you as the voice of the Lawson Cardinals, voice of the UCM Mules, and then so many other ways I've gotten to know you. So we're gonna dive in here. I want to introduce you first. You're many things, right? Many things. And so this list is not comprehensive, certainly not exhaustive, but it's kind of how I know you. And so I'll give you a chance to share who you are with everyone.
Sounds good.
But you are a teacher in the Lawson schools.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
And people who are listening to our show will notice a theme. I mean, I know a lot of people in the school district, and we've talked, this community and most small towns across the country sort of revolve around the school system. One of the biggest employers in the area, all the kids and families are mostly tied to it in some capacity or not. And you can meet really cool people who have really dynamic stories right here. And you're no exception. I've met you through here. I have most of my kids have been through your class. Have you had all of them yet?
I just had Christopher
Yeah.
come through.
Okay. Yeah. So that's all. That's
okay.
my last one. It's like 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yep. Yep. So you've had that. Most of my kids have been on academic team, which you're not a coach for that, right?
I'm a reader,
Right.
and I guess kind of an assistant coach.
Yeah.
Our academic team is kind of unique compared to a lot throughout the community in that we have a lot of assistant coaches that help out. We joke sometime that we're almost like a football coaching staff with as many people, but there's a lot of time that's put in there, and there's times where some of us can't be there for various reasons.
Yeah.
So it allows a good rotation and gets the students used to other people.
I love it. And we haven't done a podcast on it, but it's one of those uncelebrated or less widely known events, activities that the school puts together that really helps the kids grow in another type of competition, right? I mean, there's competition on the field and this competition off the field, using your brain and whatnot. I joke around with Christopher and I call it like mathletics but it's awesome.
That actually has gone through a lot of renditions throughout history.
Really?
I remember when I was a student, we referred to it a lot of times as Brain Bowl. And then I remember it was
Knowledge
called Quiz
Bowl.
Bowl or
Yep.
Knowledge Bowl. And, now it's academic teams. And just trying to find that name. And you're right. It's one of those lesser known pieces of the Lawson. It's not something that you'll necessarily see like your basketball or football or baseball, softball, track, volleyball. And we're really blessed at Lawson to have a lot of those types of programs between
robotics.
We've got obviously the marching band you see, but great concert band. You have the color guard that works with those. Then we have a theater program or the music program between the choir and the band is just awesome. We get a lot of, how should I put this? You get to see a lot of the character and a lot of the confidence and skills build in our students because they've got some great teachers, some great people that are pushing that envelope to get them better and better and better.
Yep. And you season the student population with lots of activities across many different athletic abilities and interests, right?
Yeah.
Talking with Dr. Stevenson recently, we had a show on Lawson FFA and how that spoke to yet another type of kid in the community. So
that has been a great addition to the school, and one where coming from a small school, I thought everybody had it, and then we don't have one, and so it's been real exciting, to see the involvement, see the students that have gotten involved, and you're right, it's just another avenue for them to find their interests, find their skills, and get involved.
Yep.
And you take a look at statistics, students that are involved tend to do better in the classroom because they have something pushing them and they care more about their success.
Yeah, they're engaged.
Yeah.
Also know you as a baseball coach and a fellow parent in the Lawson community. We are friends on Facebook, which I'm trying to bump up how many friends I've got. I love to follow people online. I like your notes on Facebook. You do dad notes, positive notes, sale notes, all kinds of notes just around what is going on in your life. And there's very little to no negativity, which I think is amazing. I think we need more people like you with that sort of attitude in this world. So
that started, I'm trying to think, it's been 13, 14 years ago now. And there was a point in my life where it seemed like every phone call I got was something negative, something not going. And as you said, we have so much negative in the world. And I decided, there's something good that happens every day in our lives.
Every day.
You might have to search for it, but it's there. And so I started doing a daily positive note.
Yep.
And it could be just like, hey, it's Friday. We made it through the week.
Yeah.
But I try to do a positive note. And, a lot of times it, I don't know, kind of feels like you're spitting in the wind with everything going on. But I've had people tell me, I look forward to those.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing what's going on. And so I try to keep that up.
Yeah. Well, mission accomplished. It's encouraging to me when I see it. You also kind of live your life very transparently and publicly. And I kind of I see you online, and then when we've talked as you're almost documenting for the sake of history, which is interesting because you are a history teacher. But it's sort of a healthy processing of your life events. You shaved your head as a point of solidarity related to your sister's cancer
My sister at that
battle.
time.
Yep. And I've seen, the way you process certain things. You kind of do the situation, action, result. Here's what we did. Here's kind of how we handled it. And then here's where we are now. Here's the result. And that's all super positive. You're a fellow NWMSU grad. Go Bearcats.
That's true. Yep.
And you met your wife in college in band, yeah?
I did. And yeah, there's a story there too. Yes.
Lastly, you are the voice of Cardinal Sports and the UCM Mules. And people can already tell that voice though, man. You got it. And it's sort of like makes me a little more like interested in just being quiet on my own podcast, because when you're in the room and talking, people want to hear your voice, not mine.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I don't always like my voice. I don't think anybody really likes their voice. So it's kind of surprising to me that everybody's like, "Oh, you've got the perfect voice for this," and I'm going, "Really?"
Yeah.
So
isn't that crazy?
It is.
Yeah, and let that sink in a little bit. The people who may be struggling, right? I mean, you're professional. You're doing this professionally in a couple different ways. You're leading it, and then even you dealing with a bit of self-doubt.
Definitely. And as I said, I don't think anybody really truly likes their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Even the PA announcer that they record for like MLB The Show,
yeah,
and does so much pro stuff, he even said, "I don't like my voice."
That's crazy.
So for those of us who are out there doing this, sometimes it comes as a little bit of surprise that, oh, people want to hear me on the mic.
Yeah. Well, I've come to appreciate your voice at Lawson baseball games and different games you've called around here, and I can only imagine the folks at Warrensburg feeling the same way. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe how you were, or not how you were born? I think we all know kind of how that happens. maybe where you were born, raised, and a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I was not assembled in a factory. Although sometimes I think some of my students wonder. But no, I was actually born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and lived there through fourth grade. And during that time, my parents had split, and my mom had moved to Missouri. So going into 10 years old, she got custody of my sister and I, and we moved to a little town in northwest Missouri, Tarkio, Missouri. And went through the rest of elementary, middle school, high school there. Ended up going to college at Northwest.
Yeah. How far was Tarkio from Northwest?
It's about 36 miles, which I joke is a great distance, and that you're far enough away from home that you get to, develop on your own.
Yep.
But I was close enough to be able to go home every weekend to work and have my mom do my laundry.
Yeah.
So there was... And when she listens to this, she'll probably shake her head and go, yep, you did that.
That's Max. That's right.
But after graduating, actually, my first teaching job was in a little school just north of Columbia.
Okay.
And worked there for 2 years. And then I thought I got what I thought was my dream job up at Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I moved up there. She taught at Maryville School for 5 years, and I worked with... it's called the Northwest Upward Bound Program. It's a TRIO grant program. I had actually been involved with it as a student and as a part-time staff.
Wow.
And got hired on as full-time staff and was their academic coordinator for 4 years, the director for 1, when I realized that this isn't going to work for my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly believe from that experience that you can love something too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that program. I believed in that program. For those people who don't know, Upward Bound is one of the TRIO grant programs from the federal government, and their goal was to take students who were low income and or the first in their family to go to college, and taught them how to succeed in high school and then how to go on to college.
Yeah.
And I attribute a lot of my success to that program because I don't think I would be here at this level.
Were you the first in your family to graduate?
I am the first in my immediate family, yes.
Wow.
Neither of my parents did. They were both very hardworking people, but they didn't get to go to college. My grandparents didn't. I have a cousin who did.
Mm-hmm.
But no, in terms of my immediate family, I was the first one to go. So it's kind of like, blazing a path that wasn't there.
Sure. Building bridges, man.
Yeah.
And then to give back.
And Upward Bound did that for me and helped me to get through that path, gave me the guidance. And so I wanted to go back and work with them and did that for, I said, 5 years and thought I had my dream job as director, that I was going to be at Northwest for the rest of my career. I had a office in the admin building. I had the gold nameplate, and I was able to help my students out.
Yeah.
And got about 6 months into it and realized something wasn't right. Something wasn't sitting well in me, and it wasn't going to work for my family. And I need to get back to teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what brought us to Lawson. Is you throw out a bunch of resumes, and at that time teachers were more plentiful than they are today.
Right.
And I had 2 interviews, and Lawson hired me, and the rest is history.
How long ago was that?
That was 2005. I've been here 20 years, going on my 21st year teaching here at Lawson.
That's awesome. Well, you've been a staple since I've been here. I know that. So I'm like, you've been here longer than me. So that's excellent.
The subtitle, you're getting old.
No. It's come to the territory, right? I'm feeling it myself. I'm old enough and I've been here long enough for people to think that I've been here my whole life. But the real Lawsonites, the people who've been here all the time, they still know.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's a transplant. That's all right though. I still love it anyway.
It's
all right. Tell us about your family, wife, kids. You got a lovely wife, Heather.
I do.
Lovely daughter, Allison.
Heather and I, as you said, we met in college. We had met once previously, but then we started dating in the marching band. And a year later, I actually proposed to her on the 50-yard line during the halftime performance. That was approved and kind of set up by the director.
Oh, about that.
Yeah, thank God she said yes.
Yeah, I've watched a few reels about guys getting rejected, and it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be good.
But, and then we got married. We've been now married 26 years. So she has put up with me well and hasn't killed me yet. And then, daughter Allison. Allison is 15, going into her sophomore year here at Lawson. And
Good.
She is our fine arts student. She is into color guard, into marching band, drumline, in the theater. She's been doing that since she's been in 7th grade, and just really finding her niche and finding what she loves, which is awesome.
That is awesome. That is awesome. How might people know you?
Really here it would be probably through the school.
Yeah.
Just the time that my wife and I, my daughter, have had here in school, doing things throughout the community. Obviously we live down the road, but we try to do as much as we can with Lawson. We come up to the picnic every year.
Yep.
Hit the farmer's market once in a while. My daughter was actually selling items in the farmer's market last year.
Oh, brilliant.
A few times. And then, the announcing, announced several different sports, as well as robotics. And I've been invited the last 2 years to MC the Lawson Christmas party, the lighting the park. And so I've been up there a bit. So
yeah, I was going to say, I knew when I was putting together my notes of your accolades, I was missing something. That was definitely one of them. And there's a lot of pressure that goes along with that, right? I mean, there's a couple of hours worth of activities, and then all the pressure of people staring at you, not knowing what's going on. You're man in control and in charge.
There's a lot. And with everything, just like your podcast, the preparation is the biggest piece.
Yeah.
For the Lawson in the Park, I went to some of their meetings that the committee did, was involved in figuring out, okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
What points are these starting? And then I went home and started writing up my script and had it planned out and how to introduce. And you still have to be, able to adjust and quickly, because, okay, Santa's coming in at, 4:30. Well, it's 4 o'clock. He's here. We got to switch things up. And,
Yeah. Well, and too, you've said the word script a couple times now. The script is, at some point, like when you're talking, it's almost a recommendation. And so you've got to be able to either follow it when you're on time or go off the cuff and figure it out. And I can't tell when you're doing either way. So I think that means you're doing it right.
Well, I appreciate it. I learned quickly at that, and I've had some advice, some mentoring, which I'm sure we'll get into later.
Yeah.
But I had a gentleman tell me that on every game, the PA announcer has to be the best prepared person in the booth.
Yeah.
And my first game or two, I tried to wing parts of it. And there was a football game. My mom, my sister, and a lot of my family was there. And through the opening gate, I remember I kind of, it was one of the mid-buck or East Buck teams, and I hesitated on the mascot, and you're surprised what you can hear up in the booth. And I heard one of the fans go, "Well, we're playing somebody."
Yeah.
And I went, "Okay, you can't do this. You got to be prepared.
You got to be tight."
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. All right. We've gotten to know you from a, just, what do you say? What do you call it? Just, we've introduced you, right? But you never really get to know somebody until you have some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
We've got a few here for you. Who is your favorite historical figure?
That is a tough one. There's a lot of different ones teaching history. I mean, obviously George Washington, in his 40s, taking this country through the Revolutionary War, and then later turn around and having to put this country on a path.
Yep.
Abraham Lincoln and him trying to keep the country together. But there's also some of the smaller historical figures, like one, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain from the Battle of Gettysburg, leading the 20th Maine down Little Round Top with the bayonet charge. It's we look at history and we see the big names all the time.
Sure.
But just like anybody, there's a whole lot of people that help make that happen.
Absolutely.
And when you can see those smaller stories, that's what brings the history to life a lot of times.
Yeah, right on. And you can identify sometimes with those smaller stories, a little bit more like you, maybe something that's gone on in your life that you think, that's probably how I would have handled it, or hope I would have handled it.
Exactly. Yes.
Or maybe we don't want to be the Benedict Arnold of history. Best sports moment you've ever announced.
This, I don't know if it's necessarily sports.
Okay.
But there's a few pieces that had personal connections with me that I felt were important. Obviously winning districts baseball, hosting those district games and being able to be up there and announce, Lawson Cardinals, class 3 section, 15 district winners. It's exciting. Having been on the field as an assistant coach, knowing what the coaches and players are experiencing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. A couple others that were memory making. And the first one's a little difficult. A year ago, we did a tribute or kind of a fundraising for Patrick Hand when he was battling. And that was really, really important. Yeah. And I remember at the beginning of the game, he was throwing out the first pitch, and I looked down and him and Dad are throwing the ball back and forth. And I was like, they might not have done that had we not done this. So it gave that opportunity. Yeah. Another one that was a lot of fun was announcing UCM last year. They do a punt, pass, and kick contest at the beginning of halftime. Yep. And they pick a random student from the student section, and they have to punt the ball, throw the ball, and then try to make a field goal. So they got to cover 100 yards and then put it through the goalpost. And I get the name, and I look at it, and I spin around and go, "Are you serious? I know this student." And it was Lucas Pollard. Okay. And I mean, he came through my class. I coached him on the baseball field. And then we get started, and it was the moment I actually recorded myself announcing. And there's this big long pause while we waited for the other team to get across the field. And they finally cleared the field after what seemed like forever. And Polly does this beautiful punt that goes, 45, 50 yards at least. And then he throws it, and the people in the booth around me go from, yeah, probably not going to make it, if he goes much farther, he's going to have to kick that field goal from under the field goal post. And I think he ended up setting up for maybe about a 15-yard field goal, and he put it through, and it was the first person I'd ever seen win it. And it was an exciting moment, being able to include people that, wasn't necessarily the team, but I had a connection to.
Yeah, that's awesome. So good. I'll go back to that first one, coaching or calling district ball and whatnot. Powell, my son, was a senior this year.
Yep.
And, his walkout music starts playing. You kind of turn it down, and then your voice is, calling his name and setting up. And then everybody, around in our little micro cheering section is clapping for him. It's the stuff. It's I don't say it's the stuff dreams are made of, but just makes you happy to reflect on those moments. And so your voice is in my head in a weird way, but
well, that's the neat part about it. So many people talk about, being up there and announcing the game, and it's really, I say over and over, it's about the kids and about the parents.
Yeah.
And even at the college level, they're big kids,
mm-hmm.
and they want to hear their name. Their parents want to hear their name. They want to hear the good things that's going on down there.
Yep.
And, bringing up your son, I remember one game, he's coming up to bat, and we've got a computer system up there that has all the different walk-up songs. And I click and did not realize the cursor was just a little too low, and it clicked on somebody else's walk-up music, which I forget if it was like Soldier Boy or something. And Powell stops and shoots a look up at the booth like, what is that?
Yeah, no, that's not, I can't bat to this.
And of course I'm like going, no. I'm clicking the other one real fast because I don't want to take him out of his zone either.
Oh,
but
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, he thrives in that environment, so that's excellent. All right. Is there anything you always say when you're on the mic?
You hear all these broadcasters or announcers, they all have their catchphrases.
Yeah. You got one?
I don't know if I have one, particular one that's caught on both with the middle school JV football and UCM is the first down call.
Yep.
And, when Lawson gets it, I say, that's good enough for a Lawson, and the
first
whole crowd,
down.
first down, which
yep.
obviously, you've heard before at other colleges.
Sure.
And then I went down to UCM, and they didn't have that there either. And I said, let's give this a shot. And I was encouraged by the people that worked with me to try it. I think they might have been a little skeptical if it was going to catch on.
Yeah.
And the first time I said, that's good for a UCM. And I said first down. And then the second time I didn't. And the crowd chanted it. And I was like, yes, we got it. And we had some people helping us. We have some former Lawson students that I had talked to. And said, I'm going to need your help. And the cheerleaders were on board. And it caught on.
It works, man.
And
it
works.
Does.
It gets them fired up. And last year, the Mules went to a bowl game. And one of the alumni made a sign that they had set up on their table that's good for a UCM first down. So they're enjoying it. It's bringing energy to the field, which is the important part.
That's awesome. All right. What's your go-to snack after a long day?
I thought about this one, and my first answer is whatever I have in the pantry.
Right.
But there's one snack, which I actually have a few bags at home since I just came back from Wisconsin. And it's more of a memory piece. My grandmother always had candy out.
Okay.
And one of them that she always had out that once it's in the bowl, you can't stop eating was Bridge Mix. And so that's kind of one of my go-to celebration ones.
What is Bridge Mix?
It is an assortment of different chocolate covered, there's different chocolate covered like peanuts and other types of nuts. And then they have, some of those with more of a fruit type filling and it's just, it's a unique mix that my grandmother had in her house. So I pull it in, it brings back memories, and kind of use it as celebration piece.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, switching up a little more serious here.
Okay.
Across teaching, announcing, and personal loss, what keeps you showing up with energy and presence every day?
It's not always easy.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot. When you come in, to teach, you've got students there that are depending on you. When you get there to announce, you've got the fans and the players that are depending on you to bring it every single day.
Yep.
And, I grew up with, I said earlier, parents who always worked hard, and there was a strong work ethic put in there. And I put that pressure on me that, I'm preparing these students for the future. I am, representing the team, and they need my best effort every day.
Yep.
And, do I always bring it? No, I mean, I think it's impossible for anybody to, but I'm going to step in. I'm going to give it my best shot every single day, because, that person, that group, they may be, depending on me that day.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too, because the nature of the roles that we're talking about, if you are not on as a teacher, 30 kids see that. And if you're not on as an announcer, it could be 20,000 people hear that.
Yeah.
So as you go, they go, and that's a interesting deal. So let's talk a little bit more about some of those challenges that may keep you there. I bring up some of this stuff. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on it, but you've been through a lot lately, and we see that online. I've seen that talking with you. We've mentioned you shaved your head, which still looks good, by the way.
Thank you.
Kind of kept it there. Your sister went through a pretty significant cancer battle. Yes,
She did. Yes.
and then you also recently lost your father.
Yes.
And then over the just not long ago, you were up in Wisconsin celebrating their lives and putting some things together, right? I mean, so maybe walk us through that, and maybe a time where you maybe found some strength or unexpected clarity at the time.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get through this without too much emotion, because it is still very fresh.
Sure.
As a background, I'd say about 2 years ago, my sister, who's about 4 years younger than me, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she lived out in LA with her husband, had good jobs. And so I'm thousands of miles away from her. And she started the battle and started the chemo, and being so far away, about the only thing I could do for solidarity other than talking to her was to shave my head and say, I'm there with you. I also went to a business and asked them to make a hat for me, and had a black hat and had the cardinal put on the front, but I had the cardinal stitched in pink.
Brilliant.
As a representation of her battle, and I had the breast cancer ribbon on the back of it. And I wore that hat pretty much nonstop throughout her battle. It was very rare. When I went down to UCM to announce, I would have their hat in the passenger seat, and I would wear my sister's hat all the way into Warrensburg. I would switch hats to announce the game in, and as soon as I walked out, I took that hat off.
Yeah.
And she went through chemo, she went through radiation, and was a pro through all of it. She was strong, always positive, and then come to find out afterwards that the cancer had shifted to her liver. It was still breast cancer, but I'm going to mispronounce this name, but I think it's metastasized into her liver, which I guess 50% of breast cancer patients have that happen.
Oh, wow.
So it was all of a sudden a new battle, and kind of hit hard, because we went from, hey, we beat it, to, oh no, we got to do this again.
Yeah.
And she started going through chemo treatments again. And then in the fall of last year, so 2024, my dad gave us a call and told us that he was now battling cancer. And that was pretty aggressive. And so, now there was two battles that we had to fight and pray for and hope for the best.
Sure.
And just before Thanksgiving, which we were planning to go to Wisconsin for Thanksgiving to see Dad, got the call from his wife that he was in the hospital and wasn't sure if he was going to make it. And there was a chance we were going to take off and head up there and miss several days of school and some other events that I had that actually my daughter had.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the tough decision at that point that I need to be a dad. I need to be here for my daughter's events, and my dad would understand.
Yeah.
We ended up going up for Thanksgiving. He started doing better. Celebrated, I guess you could say, Thanksgiving at the hospital cafeteria, my wife, daughter, and I.
Mm.
And then Friday morning we came back and get home, kind of stay up late to decompress. And then about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a call from his wife saying he's not going to make it. And he went downhill that fast.
Oh my gosh.
And so later that morning, got the call that, when I say later, I mean like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, that he had left us. And so that hit hard, and that, battled through. I kind of had the weekend to try to recover and then go back in front of the classroom on Monday, which had a lot of support from my administration and my co-teachers saying, take the time off.
Sure.
And that's just not me. Sitting in the house, just dwelling on it wasn't going to help me.
Yeah.
I needed to be in front of my students doing something that I felt was valuable.
Sure.
And then 41 days later, I get the call that my sister has passed as well. So
how many days?
41.
41 days later. So this was late November for your father, and then early January for your sister.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was tough, and it really hit hard. And they did a celebration for my sister in California, and my dad's wife had talked about, waiting till after the Wisconsin winter to do his celebration.
Yeah.
So my sister's husband decided that he would have a celebration for the Wisconsin people as well and bring the ashes to Wisconsin. And that was just this last weekend.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to call it announcing, because it's not. It's a different, I guess.
Different message.
Different message.
Yeah, different forum.
It's more personal.
Sure.
And I had the important honor of kind of reading a eulogy at my dad's celebration. And then my youngest sister had written a great eulogy for Diana, and I read that as well. And I can't say that, there wasn't emotion in it.
Yeah.
But that kind of long story about how everything happened. And there was not a lot of clarity, as you can kind of tell. I mean, It was, things are going good, then they're going bad, and then we're not sure, and then it's done. So the clarity piece was rough. I got a lot of support, obviously from my wife, my daughter, my family. I already said my administration and my co-workers, my friends were awesome. The students were awesome. The students gave me a lot of strength.
Yeah.
And probably that moment that you asked about in terms of, a piece of clarity or a piece of strength really didn't come till probably within the last week. And I was trying to think about things to add to my sister's eulogy, because when you think about all this, you do all these prayers, you do all these, shaving my head, getting a hat, and praying and hoping that things work well.
Yeah.
And they come out the way you want them to. And obviously neither one was a situation that ended the way we wanted it to. And you get mad, you get frustrated,
Sure. Go through the
steps
grief of grieving. Yeah.
And there was a quote that I've spoke a lot of times, and it was actually in the movie Rudy.
Mm-hmm.
And, Rudy's praying to get on the football team, and he's in the church, and he goes, maybe I don't pray enough. And the priest goes, praying is something we do in our time.
Mm-hmm.
The answers, they come in God's time.
Mm-hmm.
So, we did all this stuff, which wasn't wasted. But in the end, that was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And now it's time for us to come to that healing stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you talking about the eulogy piece, and that would be something I would encourage anyone to do, whether or not you're going to vocalize it or not. In that process, you talked about difficulty preparing those words, contributing to your sister's comments about your father, and you almost kind of force yourself to go through that grieving process because you've got to then somehow or another take what you're feeling and express it. You got to put it into words, and most everybody else is just going to cry.
Yeah.
Right. They're not there. Your time to cry is during the preparing of it and whatnot. And then you release it with the words that come out. Right. And then, now you can move on and you can heal, which is wonderful.
I joke around. One of the movies that my dad often quoted, kind of an older comedy movie, What About Bob?
Yeah.
Where it's like baby steps, Bob. It's baby steps.
Yeah.
And, that's one of the things I'm learning. I've been very blessed in my life in that I had my grandparents through late in my life, through about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I still have my mother, and I've had my dad throughout most of my life. And so the whole getting hit with that grieving process has kind of been new. And I said, this just isn't me. I normally bounce back. And my wife agreed. She goes, yeah, usually, you just let things kind of roll off your back and you keep moving on. And this has been a different struggle.
Sure. And, it's like outside the natural order of things. Your dad's been there forever. Your sister's been there forever. And so now you got to find some new normal, whatever that looks like.
I saw a meme that said, when you lose your parents, in this case, thankfully not both, but parent a younger sister, you lose a piece of that childhood that's always been there.
Yeah.
And that's been that comfort piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you feel like, while you're in this process, do you feel like it's kind of shaping who you are as a teacher, coach, announcing? You feel like this is going to impact your future in these other areas of your life?
I don't know if it's going to impact, necessarily those. I think it's going to impact more just enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
And valuing that time that you have with people, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And and it shouldn't take that moment to make us realize that.
Yeah.
It's a blessing to be able to wake up and see the sunrise and see all that stuff. And too often we get into a schedule. We got to go here. We got to do this. We got to get, the laundry cleaned or the yard mowed. And, we got to enjoy life.
Yeah. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes that talks about how it's a joy to come into the house of mourning. Like, and house of mourning would be like a funeral parlor or whatever, like one of these visitations that you're talking about. And it's almost even better than a celebration, because when you're in that space of grief and reflection and whatnot, you have the opportunity to think about this time, right? You come away with it with a new purpose, a new appreciation for relationships, a new whatnot. And that's the growth that makes for a better life ultimately. And you don't necessarily get that same level of growth sitting on a beach or, on some vacation,
Those times of reflection are important. And I've had different times where, you start to discover, why am I doing this? What is my purpose in terms of, for me, for teaching or for announcing?
Yeah.
And I never really thought about it before until a couple times, some for good, some for obviously a little more sad, that you start to reflect and figure out, what are you doing? What do you need to do?
Yeah. So, again, not necessarily trying to dig too far too fast, but, you talked about the support that you had through the administration, your friends, family, people coming alongside you, right? You've been you've been lovingly encouraged through this whole part. So, I mean, like, you feel like you'll be a different friend to somebody else who's maybe gone through this in the future, or you know what I mean? How you feel like you'll be able to lead or mentor somebody through this differently now?
I hope that as a friend, as a coworker, that I would be that person they'd want to come to anyways, or trust to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. There's been a lot of people involved that I've mentioned. A lot of times when I'm battling stuff like this, I won't say much.
Yeah.
And, my wife watches out for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, she snuck little messages to some of my co-teachers. Hey, watch out for Joe.
Yeah.
He's kind of struggling.
Yeah.
And then you got the co-teachers, which I've got a great group around me.
Yeah.
I love teaching with them. We say coworkers, but they're friends. They're people that you can count on. They count on you.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond just walking into a classroom and saying hi, good morning.
Yeah.
And they watched out for me. I said the administration, they encouraged me to take time if I needed it. So no, there's a lot of support. And I don't know if you can say that for all districts that are out there.
I guarantee you can't.
But
my mother was a teacher for several years through multiple school districts, and how your administration goes, how your coworkers go, is how your, not necessarily your career goes, but how your experiences go. And so that level of support is unique here.
Yeah, and it was there. I said I had, get text message. How you doing? You holding up? And do you guys need anything? And no, that support's valuable.
Yeah. So you've made it through that. Now you're into this other process of recovery, right? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the teaching that you dive into, right? Maybe to distract a little bit, heal in the process. Your style really stands out, right? Kind of unashamedly. I don't want to call it. I'm not even going to call it. That's the wrong word. You are willing to put yourself out there in a way that most aren't. You'll risk embarrassment for the sake of like dressing up or something like that, right? You'll put yourself in maybe an old military uniform or whatever. You'll dress the part for the sake of building effect. You have lots of artifacts in your room, So what kind of led you to that approach? Because I mean that's very, very unique and celebrated by the kids. By the way, I mean they love it and they've loved you as a teacher and and whatnot. But it is unique, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And your classroom is just full of stuff.
It is. I talk often that it is a museum when you walk into it.
Yeah.
I tried to count last year how many different artifacts I have in there, and it's up there.
I'm sure it is. It's how you define artifact and how you count things. I mean, there's thousands of things in there. It's awesome.
There's artifacts or junk or I don't know, rusty gold. I don't know what you want to call it.
That's fantastic.
A lot of it depends on what time of the year it is.
Yeah.
If I'm setting it up or tearing it down, it's a whole bunch of junk.
Yeah. Everything's got to go in and out every year, right? Because they do stuff with the school or whatever. Are you permitted to kind of keep some things up periodically?
I pack everything up every year, put it out every year. And I joke that I do that for 3 reasons. And one is, they do a whole lot of stuff to the classrooms throughout the school year. Mm-hmm. You have maintenance crews that have to come in. Our tech department comes in and out. And a lot of times, a lot of the doors are open so that they can quickly get in and out.
Yeah.
And we have people who are out of district, and you never know who's.
Yeah. You don't want any stuff walking off.
Yeah. And it's a lot harder to walk off with a big tote than it is, an item off a shelf. Throughout the summer, I do a lot of garage sales or I just came from Wisconsin, so they're rummage sales, or thrift stores, antique stores. And I'm constantly adding or removing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to add the stuff when you're putting everything out.
Yeah.
And then I joke, then everything gets dusted twice a year too.
Yeah. So, I've got ideas of how this might impact the kids, but I mean, can you give us an example of maybe how you've seen a kid learn as a result of of your method as opposed to the way, maybe a traditional lesson might have been taught?
No, I think there's value in all sorts of presentations and way teachers teach, because when students get out into the real world, they're not going to have, a certain structure. They're
Right.
going to have to adjust to all different people. If they're ever working for somebody, they're going to have different bosses. So getting that adjustment to different, learning styles, I think is important. In terms of the artifacts, the first one that I brought in was when we were talking about the keys on a keyboard for a typewriter. And I had mentioned something that they're arranged so that the typewriter doesn't jam as much. And the students looked at me going, how does a typewriter jam? Because they're just used to computers and keyboards. And
Sure.
that was my first year teaching. And so I went out to an antique store and
Grabbed a typewriter.
found a typewriter that was amazingly cheap at the time. I mean, I think it was like $12. And I put it in the classroom, and I had all these students up there clicking away at it.
Yeah.
And I've had a more recent time with my daughter and one of her friends typing on it when they were young. And as I said, when I'm spending the extra time putting it up or taking the classroom down, now there's a lot of times I'm kind of grumbling to myself going, why do you do this? You could be enjoying, time off right now. But then in the open house, when the parents come in and they, are like, wow, and asking questions. And when the students come in and they're intrigued and they ask questions about the items, it's getting their brains engaged. It's getting their minds on history. And once that flow is going, then you can start to teach the other parts that you're trying to teach.
Yeah.
The students have to want to come into your classroom. And I think that is part of what makes them want to come in. I've had students, there was one year I had some items that came up missing, and I told the class, I'm going to, if I don't get those back, I'm going to pack it up. And I brought in some totes and was getting ready to pack it up, and then all the items returned.
What do you know?
And I had a student that was mad, and he's like, I've waited to come in here and enjoy this, and now somebody screwed it up.
Yeah.
And now I think they enjoy it, and I hope they do.
Yeah.
And just get them interested in history, because there's things that we take for granted, that they don't. I mean, cassette tapes. A lot of them have not listened to a cassette tape.
Yeah.
And so it's that chance to get them engaged.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, I think the history comes alive when they can see it and sometimes feel it and touch it or whatever, but definitely identify with it in a new way, right?
Yeah.
You get a typewriter in your hand versus a keyboard versus a smartphone with haptic feedback. It's different.
Exactly.
It's the same, but it's different. And, it's words on a screen or a paper or ink transfer, but it's all the same. It's all. I was at a museum recently, on a vacation, and the whole museum was set up historically like that. So you could go around to different floors, and they had different types of things. There was like business and industry, automotive, computers, technology, electricity or whatnot. And each display carried forward like the history of the computer. So they had like a big computer with all the knobs and tubes and wires and stuff like that. Then they had a Commodore 64 and an Apple, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
You could follow the microprocessor all the way through, the computer, the screen, the technology, all the way through. And you could see 50, 80, 100 years of innovation just on display. So it's reminding me of your style and philosophy and your preparation, because it takes effort and thought to put that stuff together.
And there's a lot more that I do that I probably shouldn't do, just because I'm so meticulous, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I'll put something up, I'll take it back down and
ruminate on it for a while.
Yeah. I try to put a theme together to where if you look at different parts of my room, maybe this one has, more automotive stuff, or this one has more military stuff or more kitchen stuff. And just to show them that history and what, people years before, whether it was their parents or grandparents or great grandparents, had to work with.
Yeah. Well, it's serving you well in the classroom, and obviously your preparation is on display, and that is also now serving you well in other areas, right? I mean, the main thing I want to talk about. We've just had just delightful conversation, by the way. I'm just loving the heck out of this. Um, let's talk about your preparation for calling games, and
Okay.
I mean, I think that is something that is just deeply fascinating that most people don't know. Like we've already covered some of the things, right? You don't just get up there and wing it, although you have the ability to wing it. There is a lot of effort and work that goes into it. You talked about a script. Um, before we dig into that, can you tell us like how you even got to the point where you were like, oh, hey, I'll call the game. I'll, how does one even say this is something I'm interested in and then pursue it and then practice and actually get to a point where you can say, I like this. I want to keep doing that.
Honestly, it wasn't as much me realizing it. Thinking back on it, in college, when I was a student, I got to MC an awards banquet, and that was more just because, I had a good rapport
Sure.
with the people that were with the program. And then my first teaching job, there was one basketball game where I'm assuming their normal caller wasn't there, and they wanted me just to introduce the players. And so I showed up, made sure I had the names right, and I introduced the starting lineups, and then I left. Nobody said anything more to me. And I kind of, at that point, was like, okay, well, that was fun, but obviously that's all.
Next.
And and actually 2019, Daniel Pettit came up to me. He was the athletic director at the time. Now he's the high school principal. And he goes, hey, I was working the chain crew for the middle school games. I've been doing that for about 10 years. He goes, hey, do you want to go up and try announcing? I said, I've never done that before. He goes, well, why don't you give it a shot? And first thing I did was I called a buddy of mine who graduated from Northwest, who I knew he was the announcer for University of Nebraska Kearney.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I said, hey, how do I do this? And he went through and spent 45 minutes talking to me about different points, different, pieces of advice, things to do, even things as small as, it doesn't matter if it's cold or rainy, have the window in front of you open a little bit so you can hear the whistle, you can hear the calls on the field, and you have that, kind of interaction piece.
Yeah.
And so I started that, 2019 season and was mainly doing middle school JV football. And, people liked it. They wanted me to stay in the booth.
Mm-hmm.
And, from there, kept doing JV middle school for a few years. And then I think it was 2023, I stepped down from assistant baseball coach when Coach Jacobson retired. And first game of the season, I didn't know if I was going to go to the field or not. I thought maybe, the team and I needed separation. As I was leaving school, I went, I forgot to show Coach how to set up the booth, because that was kind of one of my jobs I did as assistant coach. And so I ran down there, and most of it was already set up. And at that time, they had just 2 people working the booth doing all the different jobs. And I asked, can I announce? And they were fine with that.
Yeah.
I announced, and then I started announcing baseball, and that, flowed into softball the next year when I could announce a softball game.
Yeah.
And last summer, we were getting into probably about July. I had been talking a little bit to William Jewell about maybe some announcing possibilities there when a high school schoolmate of mine sent me a message, said, hey, have you seen this? And UCM was looking for PA announcers.
Yeah.
They had a major change in their athletic department. The long-term athletic director, who was really beloved and had worked there for 40 years, had unexpectedly passed, and a lot of the other people had retired at that point.
Yeah. Big changing of the guard. They were looking for a new start.
They were looking for volleyball, basketball, and football PA. And at first, this was a little tough for me. My wife and I talked about it a lot. I mean, this is for me, university treason, having graduated from Northwest and, now
them's
going
fighting words right there.
going to a rival. And
What do you mean you're going to Central Missouri State?
I mean, it was a change in colors from green to red, which I wear a lot of red with Lawson. And finally decided that, these opportunities don't come up often.
Right.
And if I don't at least try, then, I'm going to have that regret of what if. And threw my name in the hat, really thought I was a long shot. I figured they had somebody in-house. And it was kind of a delayed process because they were so busy with the changeover there.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked us to record some scripts. So I recorded some scripts and did some research before I recorded them. So I had the names, and they didn't give me jersey numbers. So I looked up the jersey numbers. They didn't give me defensive players. So, they said, how about, we got an 8-yard gain, or we did this for a first down. And I'm going, okay, if there's a play, you got to list the defensive player too.
Yeah.
I actually pulled a little bit of my Lawson side, and we've had several students go to Northwest and play, and 2 of the SQ boys were playing. So on those, I asked them, I said, do you mind if I do this? And they go, no, go for it. We love it.
That's brilliant.
And so I included them as the tacklers in the script, and our theater director, Matt Sanchez, helped me out and submitted my scripts, and waited and then got the call or the email. Hey, we'd like to have you. And went down, talked to him, and it's been a great fit. So
that's incredible.
It's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of unexpected, but it just goes back to, you don't know what's going to happen unless you give it a shot.
Well, right. And there's a pursuit that happens there. There's just, I love that you use the phrase, throw your name in the hat, right? It's like, if you don't take that step forward, nobody's going to take it for you.
Yeah.
And if that's something that you're interested in, so what if the answer is no? It's guaranteed you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's one of my favorite quotes. So take that shot, and you did, and what a reward.
Yeah, it's been a transition. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. But you're going to prime time there, right? And that's why I say, maybe let's talk about the what it's like to be at the mic at maybe small town, Lawson type stuff, right? There's pressure here, but I wouldn't say there's probably not the same type of pressure. Am I right there? Or is it just a different type of pressure?
It's I've been asked
what's it feel like at
before.
The mic?
There's different levels of, somebody goes, are you more stressed for one than another? And UCM is probably one of the ones I get more nervous about.
Sure.
I'm new to it. There's a whole lot more involved in it.
Yeah.
But then ironically, after that, probably the most stressful one is softball.
Really?
Which sounds weird, but when you're announcing, you're clicking on the walk-up music, you're announcing the name, and unlike baseball, where those boys, they come up, they take their time, they get their practice swings. Those girls, they are in the box sometimes before I can even announce their name.
Right.
So
now.
then I'm trying to beat the pitch and get that. So it's a lot faster.
Yeah.
But at Lawson with announcing here, it's awesome. It's a small town. You get the people going, the kids, or the student athletes, from being in your classroom, and you want to do great for the hometown.
Yeah.
And you've got people in the booth with you that run the scorebook or the clock. And, but a lot of, at least what I do with Lawson, is a lot more me.
Yeah.
I type up the script for it, so I'm prepared. I will go down. I will talk to the coaches and make sure I've got the names, pronunciation.
Like the opposing team coaches. Yeah. Okay.
Which, I got to throw this in here because you see a lot of coaches. I've been blessed that, I've talked to high school coaches and college coaches, usually the assistant college coaches. And, a lot of them are awesome. Every single one for the most part has been awesome. And they're like, yeah, I want to make sure, you get the names right and, to honor our students. And I had one that I was asking him and start off, and he goes, you know what? Call them whatever the heck you want. I was like, well, don't you want to do this for your players? He goes, no, not really. Just call them whatever you want. And I said, well, I really would rather not, upset a bunch of parents. And he goes, I'll live for it. Don't care. And I went, okay. Obviously your players are not your concern, and just the win or loss is.
Yeah.
And, it kind of was a reset for me. And, I really appreciate, I said, that was the only one negative piece I've ever had talking to coaches. All the others been really supportive. And I appreciate those coaches that are there for their players and not just the wins and losses. And I did listen, to the podcast that you did with Coach Rob and Coach Burton. And honestly, that was my first podcast I've ever listened to. So
ever.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there's a piece.
Welcome to the now.
Yeah. So
we've been waiting.
So and they talked about we're coaching up young men and preparing them for the future.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot about a coach. So again, at Lawson, a lot of the script and everything, I gear up. Sometimes I'll get a piece that, administration or somebody wants me to read. I make sure that's approvable.
Sure.
At UCM, I'm a small, kind of a piece into a bigger, they have, different, you have your main athletic director, but then you have all these assistants, and some, their job is to get sponsors. Some is to set up game day, and they type up a script for me. And when I sit down, I've got a script that was never less than 20 pages, and it has, 11 minutes left in the clock before game time. You start reading the script, and starts off with a whole bunch of sponsorships and then some recognitions. And then there's pieces that you have to read for the first time out or the first media timeout. The last game I ever announced there, they did a flyover. So they're like, you cannot start announcing this piece until 4 minutes, 30 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
And that way we've got it timed out with the pilots for the anthem.
Yeah.
And it's a different level up there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the type of thing that, you talk about the difference between calling softball. If you miss a player's name, they're in the batter's box. It stinks for the sake of quality and, parents' opinions and feelings and kids, awareness of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. If we're still right in the middle of the national anthem and an A-10 Warthog flies over, somebody didn't do their job, and somebody's going to come looking for that, right? Yeah. Or you miss a media timeout for somebody who paid thousands of dollars for airtime on a local radio program, or for advertisements. That's not. They come calling for those mistakes.
It's interesting because you bring up the mistakes, and a lot of times if I miss a player, I feel bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes if I can catch the parent, I say something, they're like, oh, I didn't even notice. It's no big deal. My very first game I announced, I'm still, getting my feet wet, figuring things out. I leave the booth, I'm coming down the stairs, and I have a parent that meets me and goes, this is how you pronounce my kid's last name. And I didn't take offense at that. I was, in my mind,
it's a long season. I'll get it right next time.
And I spent the rest of the week, working on that name to make sure that, the next game, if he was a player that made a play, I had him right.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's lots of pressure on the other, like, at UCM, the first third down of every drive, I have to read a sponsorship script to get the fans going. And,
well, and that's a level of awareness too, because you got to know the play, you got to know the situation. I mean, it's not unlike baseball in that regard. But because is this the first third down or is this the second third down? And, where are we at in respect to the next timeout and media timeout? I mean, things can go off pretty quick, and then it's probably pretty difficult to get back on.
For me, it's kind of resetting mentally.
Yeah.
And going, okay. There was one drive where you have your whole list of players, and this is on a huge sheet of paper, and for like 2 drives I had them flipped. and I was announcing the players for the wrong team. And I went, crud.
Oh.
And everybody around me is like, it's okay. You're all right. And,
Yeah.
obviously there wasn't anything coming back in, but then there's other times you're talking about somebody didn't do their job. I shouldn't say didn't do the job, but maybe didn't follow script as much.
Yeah.
My last game announcing at UCM was senior night. And, we announce all the football seniors before the game so they can be part, of their team warm-ups and everything. And then halftime was when we announced for the cheerleaders, the dance, the band.
Yeah.
And, we had a long list to go through. And I'm watching the time, and the band went like 5 minutes over their allotted time. And now it's time to announce the seniors. And I start announcing the seniors, and I give a pause, and there's a bunch of people in the booth doing different jobs. And one is on the mic with the person on the field who's kind of in charge of game day.
Yeah. Like, we got to go.
And I hear her go, you got to go faster. So I started reading. I left a shorter pause, and I hear some communication behind me. And she goes, you've got to go faster. And before I'm, know it, I'm going, this person did this, and this. This person did this, and this. And we got through it, and I actually got through it with a little time to spare. And they came up to me afterwards, goes, you saved that completely for us.
Yeah.
Because they said, it sounded like you were rapping down there, but we had to crunch time.
Yeah. Well, and all of the reasons that we mentioned before, right? If you're not done by such and such a time, then the hot clock for the radio program is off, and then the game is late and it's running long, and
the team gets penalized, which you don't want to do either.
Yeah. So you can't, you just can't mess around with it, right? And that's the thing that's on display. And at the same time, you've got to manufacture energy that doesn't make it sound like you're rushing or, you know. And it's so much different too. And this isn't like a prepared question, but it's got me thinking, you think Bob Uecker calling baseball, and there's not an ounce of rush in that guy. And who's Denny Hamlin? Is that right?
I know he's a race car driver.
No, that's not who I'm thinking of. Who's the guy who called for the Royals?
Mitch Holthus. He's the one.
Doesn't he call?
He's the radio guy.
Yeah. Didn't he call for the Chiefs?
Yeah, the Chiefs. Oh, you said Royals. I'm sorry. I thought Chiefs.
Denny Matthews.
Okay.
Yeah, Denny Hamlin. What an idiot. That'll go down in the annals of podcast history as that time Bollinger was a bonehead.
Mark later edit.
That's right. I'll just cut that. No, I won't cut it out. I'm an idiot. It's fine. I'm happy to have people to know that. Yeah, I mean, they talk about the 3-2 pitch, and here it comes, long fly ball, blah blah. They're literally, it's just stream of consciousness. But football is a little different, right? I mean, you've got timeouts, and then what if they're in a what if like an offensive set? What if they're going no huddle? You don't have time. You don't have time to do it, right?
That was a big adjustment. My first game at Warrensburg, I'm up there, and UCM does their first play, and I'm saying, that was, number 10, Zabrowski, pass to this guy at the end. I'm looking up, and they're already lined up. And I went, ooh, I got to pick up the pace, because they were a hurry up offense.
Yeah.
And, then you get to like a first down, and you're trying to get the numbers in. And then I try to do the first down, piece. And I look up and go, whoa, wait a minute. We got to hurry this. So sometimes you don't have the time to go UCM. You're like UCM and just hope that
somebody got it. First down, move on.
That's
fantastic.
I don't mean to cut from your question. You mentioned a couple announcers there.
Yeah.
And obviously Bob Uecker is one that's
legends,
close to my heart, being a Brewers fan, originally from Wisconsin. I mean, he was one that when I went home to see my dad, we listened to the radio just to hear him. Yeah. A lot of people see him as just the announcer from Major League, and they don't realize that he was for the team. And he was super involved with the team. You'd see him celebrating with the team. The players loved him. Yeah. I love that connection that he has. I guess kind of rolling a little bit. Robin Yount, was a Brewers player. And I remember him, there's this little monologue he did where he's just talking really honestly. And he goes, we can't ever think about the game as about us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there might be a player or a fan that's the only time they get to hear you or see you.
Yeah.
And you've got to bring it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's those guys I look up to. There's others too. You know, obviously Robin Yount, Hall of Famer, Bob Uecker. We talked about the Chiefs radio announcer,
Yeah,
and there's a
Mitch.
difference between radio and PA.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to be, you know, on the names, and they've got spotters helping them out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's a production across the board.
But even some, you know, local. You had mentioned earlier about, you know, voice of the Cardinals or voice of the Mules, and I'm always kind of hesitant to use that term.
Really?
I am, because like when I think of the voice of the Cardinals, you know I do a lot of sports, but you know, Bill Morrow's been up in that booth doing the varsity football for over 30 years. And,
Yeah.
in my book, he's a legend.
Yeah.
And
No, I completely
he is
agree.
smooth with that. And,
Completely agree.
you know, I hope he keeps doing it for years to come.
Yeah.
At UCM, you know, there might have been some other opportunities for me if I wasn't so far away and still working. There's, you know, a guy they brought in to do basketball who does good stuff for him. They brought some people in to work volleyball. They had asked me to come down to do track one time, but we were having games up here, and I wasn't going to leave the baseball team at that stage because I think it was districts at that point.
Yep.
And so I, you know, when I talk about the voice of like the Mules, I'm always like the voice of the football Mules because you know I don't want to take that respect from others, and I'm still learning from them. And you know, I go to a Lawson game. I'm listening to Morrow up in the booth to kind of hear, because I mean he is smooth up there, and you know I have a lot of respect for the people that have done it for a long time.
Certainly. And I mean no disrespect.
I didn't mean it that way. No. I just wanted to say, you know, they've done some great stuff, and no, I'm still, you know, some people say, no, you're not. I still feel like a rookie. I've done it for 6 years. I've had one of my co-teachers, Coach Comstock, kind of, I don't want to say challenged me, but talked about a gentleman who had announced 6,000 basketball games, and he does a lot of weekends where
that's a lot of games.
That's a lot of games. Yeah. And you know, I went home and I started looking because that was kind of a challenge. And you know, I'm close to about 180 events that I've done, but I still feel, you know, like a rookie and get that rookie excitement when I get up there in the booth.
So trying to do the math on that real quick, 180 events, call it 200 over 6 years. Yeah. 200 divided by 6 puts us
about 30 plus. And it's becoming more
30 plus a year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So to get to 6,000, I mean, you'd be needing to do it for
a long
time.
I haven't broken down per year.
Yeah.
But like now with, you know, when I first started, I was just doing the JV middle school football. I mean, it was fun. I don't want to say just. I don't want to minimize what I do here at all because it's important.
Yeah.
And it's important for, you know, I said the players, the parents, the community. I kind of laugh and get embarrassed sometimes because, you know, I've got friends obviously who live throughout the community, and they're like, yeah, we live 3 blocks from school. We know the updates on the football and just by listening to you.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
But you know, then you're doing, you know, 6-7 games, and now it gets kind of crazy. You know, when I'm doing JV middle school football, softball, and UCM football in the fall, and then you get to baseball season. The baseball team, you know, if you count, you know, varsity and JV as separate events,
sure,
you know, you're adding, you know, another potentially 30, 40 events just in the spring.
Yeah.
And said it's a lot of fun. It's a process.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into, you know, making sure you have all the information correct.
Yeah.
Oh.
Beyond kind of the booth
Mm-hmm.
or beyond calling plays and kind of all the things that we've talked through, is there anything that you hope fans and athletes take away from the experience that you kind of help create?
I hope they take the energy, and I
Yeah.
hope they take, just I, I'm gonna kind of use your word, but the experience. How I know, like here, they're high school players, they're JV players, or middle school players, but they're all putting in the work, the effort. They are
Right.
working their tails off.
Right.
You were talking earlier that your son's going to, basketball practice and helping work with community service today. They are taking their summers and their mornings and their afternoons, evenings, and they're spending all this time there.
Sure.
And I want to give them as big time feel as I can possibly give them,
Yeah.
to where, they can remember the moment. Because any of us that have played sports or been involved in activities, there's moments that you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can be a positive part of that and make them feel like a big leaguer, because maybe that's the only time their parents or their family get to come watch them play, or
Yep.
or maybe that's the time that they hit the the home run or the walk off ribby or whatever.
Sure.
I want them to be able to remember it in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I said the friend of mine who kind of mentored me, he had me come up to UNK for a game to listen to him and watch him what he does.
Yeah.
Last year went to another rival school, Missouri Western, when he was announcing there, and got to kind of see at a different level. He always has on his post #BringTheNoise, and
I like that.
I've kind of changed it a little bit. For me, I want to bring the energy.
Okay.
I think the noise is part of that energy, but I want to bring that positive energy and get people up and on their feet and cheering for their team, their student athlete. Yeah.
I like that. Bring the energy. Okay. So looking ahead, what keeps you motivated season after season, year after year? Because, you've started it, you like it, you've been doing it for 6 years. Just chatting with you and the pressure you're putting on yourself, the way you're processing and preparing for these things, doesn't look like there's any end in sight. Where does this go for you?
I really don't know where this goes. There's a lot of excitement with the announcing. I excited to bring the energy and get the players and fans involved. And,
Yeah.
In a way that, the crowd feeds off the PA, but I feed off the crowd as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, like when we're at a game that, maybe we're not doing as well at, and the crowd starts to settle in, it's like, how do I get them back up moving?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some excitement about that. Where it goes, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's been funny because, people will post, hey, you can go announce for the Chiefs. And I'm sure there's a lot of my friends that would love to see me change from green to red one more time on that level. But that is huge. And there's so many people that, could be up for that.
Right.
If you would have asked me a year and a half ago, do you see yourself announcing for a college football team? I'd have probably been like, no,
Nope.
let alone UCM.
Yep.
But, I lots of credit to UCM. They have treated me wonderfully.
Yeah.
Have welcomed me in, and I appreciate all the support they've given me. It's been great, which that helps too.
Yeah.
When you can tell that what you're doing is appreciated, and that goes for anybody in any profession.
Yeah.
When you feel appreciated and valued, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And that just helps you get fired that much more for, I said, the athletes, the fans, the family, and to keep bringing that energy. So where this goes, I don't know. It might not go any farther. If it does, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows where? I know my friend, Brandon Bennett's is the guy who's up in Nebraska Kearney. He does a lot of announcing up there. He does for the high school, for the college. They've got a small hockey team up there, kind of similar to the Mavericks.
Yeah.
He announced for them for a while. And so, who knows? You never know where the future is going to be.
Right.
20 years ago, I thought I was having my dream job. And, suddenly I'm moving my wife and we're coming down here and I'm teaching in Lawson. And,
Yep.
My plans are to retire from there, but you don't know what the future is going to hold for you.
Right.
And if some huge opportunity came up that you just couldn't say no to, who knows where that leads you.
Yeah.
You got to always be ready to take that next step if it's there.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So when people look back one day, students, athletes, friends, what do you hope they will say about Joseph Koeberl?
My students and the athletes, I thought about this question because, we talked about reflection before.
Sure.
And this is one of those reflection questions about how do I want the students to see me? And, there's a lot of different words that come to mind that, energized or passionate. But I think the basic thing is that I cared. I cared about them. I cared about their future. And I did my best to prepare them for the future so they could go out and be successful.
Yeah.
I think when it boils down to teaching, yes, I hope that my students have a grasp of what I'm teaching them. I know they're not going to remember everything. I hope they remember the big pieces. And overall, I hope that they realize that I cared about them and their future.
Yeah.
Because I think it's that type of relationship and connection that will make them want to go and do better for themselves.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the biggest frustrating parts as a teacher. I mean, obviously there's lots of things, any career that's frustrating. And, you're kind of seeing that with the teaching profession right now with the shortage, but I teach a curriculum, but I teach students. And if I can prepare them for the next step in their future, then that's, mission accomplished. Some of my best teaching moments hasn't been about the curriculum. It's been more, on the personal side of things or helping them ready for that career, that future. So yeah, I think it comes down to that he cared.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I don't think you could listen to this podcast and your story and your approach to these things and not feel like you care. So, I feel like that mission accomplished so far. And then, you mentioned listening to Coach Rob and Burton, they're kind of waiting to determine success in 20 years, wait and see what happens as a result of some of these kids and how they turn out. And then we'll make an evaluation then. So
Coach Jacobson often had mentioned that as educators, as coaches, we're planting seeds.
Yeah.
And some of those will germinate and blossom right away. Some of those, it might take 10, 15 years. And you just hope that you made that positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. It really has been awesome to have you here to learn about your business and your craft and your kids and your story. You're a really dynamic dude, and it's been awesome. Is there anything you want to share with our listeners before we let you
go? I guess kind of last piece is, enjoy life. Too often we talk about just surviving life, and life's not meant to be survived. It's meant to be lived.
Yeah.
So, take that trip, make those memories. We always talk about, we need to get together sometime. We need to get together. And then we let the excuses of schedules or busyness get in the way. Go meet up with those friends, go meet up with the family, talk to them, hug them, make some memories. Famous quote from Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast.
Yeah.
You don't stop and look around once in a while, you're going to miss it. Don't miss life. Go live it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, well, you heard it here. I love the Ferris Bueller quote. I grew up saying that myself. Oh, that was awesome. All right, everybody. This has been the Son of the Law podcast. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.